The $100 bills scattered across the polished hangar floor like a cruel joke, sliding beneath the harsh daylight pouring through the enormous glass doors. Every eye in the private jet hangar was fixed on one man kneeling beside the cash. His blue work shirt was stained with grease, his dark hair was messy, and his hands were rough from years of repairing engines no one else wanted to touch. Across from him stood Victoria Hale, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, dressed in a perfectly tailored beige business suit and sharp heels. Her expression was cold as she pointed toward the money. "Pick it up," she said. "It's yours if you can make my jet fly before sunset." Behind her, security guards in dark suits exchanged doubtful looks. A few mechanics stood beside their tool carts, whispering under their breath. The sleek white business jet behind them was worth $10 million, and its engines had refused to start for 3 days. Specialists had flown in from 2 cities. Engineers had checked every system. Yet the aircraft remained silent. The poor mechanic looked at the money, then looked at the jet. "I don't need your money," he said quietly. Victoria's eyebrows lifted. "Then why are you here?" He slowly stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "Because that jet isn't broken the way they think it is." Before we continue, if stories about courage, kindness, and proving people wrong touch your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every like helps these stories reach more people who need hope today. Victoria Hale had built Hale Aviation from almost nothing. At 38, she owned private jets, luxury resorts, and a company that employed thousands of people. People admired her intelligence, feared her temper, and respected the way she never accepted failure. But no one knew that Victoria had once been poor. Years ago, she had watched her father lose his small repair shop after a wealthy investor broke a promise. She had watched her mother sell furniture to buy groceries. She had promised herself that she would never be powerless again. Over time, that promise became something darker. Victoria learned to trust contracts instead of people, numbers instead of feelings, and success instead of kindness. That morning, she was supposed to fly to New York to close the biggest deal of her career. If she missed the meeting, her rival company could take the contract. The jet had to fly, but it would not start. The lead engineer had finally stepped away from the aircraft and shaken his head. "We have checked the fuel system, the electrical system, the ignition sequence, the turbine controls. Nothing makes sense." Victoria's patience snapped. "Nothing makes sense," she repeated. "That is not an answer." The engineer lowered his eyes. "We need more time. You have had 3 days. At that moment, a quiet voice came from the back of the hangar. "May I take a look?" Everyone turned. The man standing near the service entrance was Daniel Reed. He worked for a small maintenance company that had been hired to clean equipment and move supplies. He was not supposed to touch the jet. He was only there because one of the senior mechanics had called in sick. Victoria looked him over from head to toe. "You are a cleaner." "I'm a mechanic," Daniel replied. "I just take whatever work I can get." A few people laughed softly. The lead engineer crossed his arms. "This is not a pickup truck, friend. It's a high-performance aircraft." Daniel nodded. "I know." Victoria stepped closer, her heels clicking against the concrete. "And you believe you can fix what a team of certified engineers could not?" "I believe I can find the problem." The CEO stared at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her handbag, pulled out a thick envelope, and threw it onto the floor. The bills spilled out. $100,000, she said. "If you make that jet start before sunset, it is yours. But if you fail, you walk out of this hangar and never claim you can repair an aircraft again." The crowd went silent. Daniel looked down at the money. For a moment, something passed across his face. He had unpaid rent. His younger sister needed medical treatment. His mother's old house had a leaking roof. That money could change everything. But he did not reach for it. Instead, he picked up his tool bag. "Keep your money ready," he said. "I'll earn it." Daniel walked toward the jet while whispers followed behind him. "He doesn't stand a chance. Probably doesn't even know where to begin. Victoria is going to destroy him." But Daniel did not react. He had spent his whole life being underestimated. He had grown up in a small town where his father repaired old cars behind their house. When Daniel was 8, he learned how to recognize an engine problem just by listening. At 12, he could rebuild a carburetor. At 16, he was helping his father repair farm equipment. His father used to tell him, "Machines speak, son. Most people just don't listen long enough." Then Daniel's father died suddenly from a heart attack. The repair shop closed. The bills piled up. Daniel gave up his dream of attending aviation school and started working wherever he could. He repaired trucks, motorcycles, generators, and old machines in scrapyards. He learned from manuals, videos, retired mechanics, and years of mistakes. He never had expensive tools. He never had a famous name. But he had patience. Inside the jet, Daniel moved carefully through the cockpit. The lead engineer watched him with obvious irritation. "You should not touch anything without authorization," he warned. Daniel looked at Victoria. "Do I have authorization?" Victoria folded her arms. "You have until sunset." Daniel began with the basics. He checked the battery voltage. He checked the fuel pressure. He inspected the control panels, the circuit breakers, and the engine sensors. Everything appeared normal. That was exactly what bothered him. A machine did not simply fail without leaving a clue. He asked for the maintenance logs. The lead engineer hesitated, but Victoria ordered him to hand them over. Daniel sat on the hangar floor beside the jet, reading every page. He noticed something strange. 2 days earlier, a technician had replaced a small sensor near the auxiliary power system. "Who installed this?" Daniel asked. The engineer shrugged. "One of our contractors." "Was it tested after installation?" "Of course." Daniel looked up. "Tested by whom?" No one answered. Victoria's expression tightened. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet." He climbed back into the jet. This time, he did not focus on the main engine system. He traced a thin cable behind a panel near the auxiliary power unit. His fingers paused. The cable was not damaged. It was not disconnected. It was connected incorrectly. A tiny wiring reversal had sent the wrong signal through the startup sequence. The jet's computer believed there was a dangerous pressure imbalance, even though there was none. The safety system had shut everything down. Daniel sat back slowly. "That's it," he whispered. The lead engineer scoffed. "That cannot be the problem." Daniel looked at him. "Then why was this wire installed backward?" The engineer's face lost color. Victoria stepped closer. "Can you fix it?" "Yes." "How long?" Daniel looked toward the large hangar doors. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky. 20 minutes. The CEO's eyes narrowed. "You are certain?" "No," Daniel said. "But I know this is where the problem starts." For the first time, Victoria saw something in him she had not expected. He was not arrogant. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was simply focused. As Daniel worked, Victoria stood nearby in silence. She watched his hands move with care and precision. She watched him check every connection twice. She watched him pause whenever something did not feel right. It reminded her of her father. Her father had been a mechanic too. She had not thought about that in years. When Victoria was a little girl, she used to sit in the corner of her father's workshop while he fixed old cars. He would explain every part to her, even when she did not understand. He would say, "The smallest piece can stop the biggest machine." Then he would smile and add, "And the smallest kindness can change the biggest life." Victoria had forgotten those words. Daniel tightened the final connection and climbed down from the jet. "Try it now," he said. The engineer looked at Victoria. She gave a short nod. The cockpit crew began the startup sequence. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then a low mechanical hum filled the hangar. The lights inside the jet flickered on. The auxiliary power system came alive. And then, with a deep roar that shook the floor beneath them, the jet's engine started. The entire hangar froze. The sound of the engines was powerful, steady, and alive. The white jet that had been silent for 3 days now stood ready to fly. Tool carts rattled. Loose papers fluttered across the floor. The mechanics stared at Daniel as if they had just watched a miracle. Then someone clapped. Another mechanic joined in. Within seconds, the hangar filled with applause. Daniel did not smile. He simply looked toward the engine, listening carefully. He waited until he was sure the sound was smooth and stable. Only then did he nod. "It's running properly," he said. Victoria Hale stood motionless. For the first time in years, she had no words. The lead engineer stepped toward Daniel, his face red with embarrassment. It was a simple wiring issue. Daniel looked at him calmly. Simple issues can become expensive when no one looks closely. The engineer turned away. Victoria walked toward the envelope of money still lying on the floor. She picked it up and held it out to Daniel. "You earned this." Daniel looked at the envelope but did not take it. "I said I didn't need your money." Victoria frowned. "You completed the bet. I completed the job. Then take the payment." Daniel finally met her eyes. "You didn't offer payment. You offered humiliation dressed up as an opportunity." The words hit harder than Victoria expected. The crowd became quiet again. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "You threw money on the floor because you thought I would crawl for it. You didn't ask what I knew. You didn't ask who I was. You looked at my clothes and decided my value." Victoria felt every eye in the hangar turn toward her. Daniel picked up his tool bag. "I fixed your jet because it needed fixing, not because I wanted to win your game." He started walking toward the exit. "Wet," Victoria called. Daniel stopped but did not turn around. Victoria looked at the envelope in her hands. For most of her life, money had solved every problem. It had opened doors, silenced critics, and bought loyalty. But in that moment, it felt useless. "What do you want?" she asked. Daniel turned slowly. "I want people like you to stop treating poor people like they are invisible." The words stayed in the air. Victoria looked down at the polished floor where she had thrown the money. She remembered her father's hands stained with oil. She remembered sitting beside him in that little repair shop. She remembered how proud he had been when he fixed something no one else could. And she remembered the day the wealthy investor had laughed at him. She had spent years becoming powerful so no one could ever laugh at her again. Somewhere along the way, she had become the person who laughed. Victoria swallowed hard. "My father was a mechanic," she said quietly. Daniel's expression softened slightly. "He taught me that people matter more than money," she continued. "But after he lost everything, I stopped believing that." Daniel did not respond. Victoria stepped closer, lowering the envelope. "I was wrong today." The security guards looked shocked. The mechanics exchanged glances. Victoria Hale did not apologize, not to employees, not to rivals, not to anyone. But she looked directly at Daniel and said, "I am sorry." Daniel studied her face. He could tell she was not used to saying those words. Then he nodded once. "Make it mean something," he said. With that, he left the hangar. Victoria stood alone beside her roaring jet, holding $100,000 that suddenly felt far too small. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the small garage where he worked and found a black luxury car waiting outside. His boss rushed over nervously. "Daniel, there's someone here for you." Victoria Hale stepped out of the car. She was still dressed sharply, but there was something different in her face. She looked less like a CEO preparing for battle and more like someone carrying a difficult truth. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. "If you came to offer me money again, don't bother. I came to offer you a job," Victoria said. Daniel laughed once. "At Hale Aviation?" "Yes." "I don't have the right degree. You have the right skill. I don't have the right connections. You found a problem my best engineers missed." Daniel crossed his arms. "And what happens when I disagree with you?" Victoria looked at him honestly. "Then I listen." Daniel did not answer. Victoria opened a folder and handed it to him. Inside was an offer for a senior aircraft maintenance position, complete with training, certification support, health insurance, and a salary Daniel had never imagined earning. But there was another document beneath it. "What is this?" he asked. "A new program," Victoria said. "Hale Aviation will fund scholarships for mechanics, technicians, and young people who cannot afford aviation training. I want it named after my father." Daniel looked up. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to help build it." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he looked toward the garage behind him. The old building had broken windows. The equipment was outdated. His boss struggled every month to keep it open. Daniel thought about his sister's medical bills. He thought about his mother's roof. He thought about all the people who had talent but no chance. "You really mean this?" he asked. Victoria nodded. "I do." Daniel looked at the job offer again. "I have one condition." "Name it." "You don't make this about your company's image. You make it about the people who need it." Victoria smiled faintly. "Agreed." The months later, the first class of scholarship students entered a new aviation training center funded by Hale Aviation. Some came from poor neighborhoods. Some had worked in garages. Some had never been inside an airport before. Daniel stood in front of them wearing a clean blue mechanic's uniform with his name stitched over the pocket. Victoria stood beside him, no longer cold or distant. On the wall behind them was a simple sentence: "Talent is everywhere. Opportunity should be too." Victoria looked at Daniel and whispered, "You fixed more than my jet." Daniel smiled. "You fixed it yourself. I just pointed to the wire." And somewhere above them, a Hale Aviation jet lifted into the bright morning sky, its engines roaring with a sound that reminded everyone in the hangar of one simple truth: never judge a person by the dirt on their hands. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one who can save everything. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more emotional stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life.